Hi everyone. So welcome to the show, and we've got a very special guest today. His name is Justin. Now, he's got himself over 23 years of experience within the technology space, 14 of them working with ServiceNow. Now, currently he is the technical director at UP3. He provides technical integration and architectural leadership for UP3 for their customer base and their product portfolio. So Justin, a huge thank you and welcome to you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely. So, look, I think everybody is so intrigued and so interested about, your story, how you first got introduced to ServiceNow, and how you've got to the position that you are at the moment with UP3. Can you just share us a little bit about your background journey?
Yeah, I guess I started out like a lot of people started out, which was as a customer. And originally I was a project manager, so I was asked to project manage an implementation for a retailer that I was working for to migrate them from Remedy to another ITSM tool. So this was back in 2009. So ServiceNow were quite small at the time, so weren't really widely known within the marketplace. But we were working with a partner who was doing an ITSM maturity assessment for us, and they kind of said, you've got to look at this organization. It's really pulling up trees. It's got a new approach. So I set up all the vendor presentations, so all the common kind of vendors that were doing ITSM at the time, and getting all the stakeholders in a room. And I think ServiceNow was the last one that we saw. But yeah, they were by that time everyone was kind of really demo weary. They kind of had enough, and then ServiceNow came in and did a demonstration, and it kind of blew them all away really, and everyone was like really energized. So, and that kind of started there. We chose ServiceNow. We then brought a partner in to do that implementation. I worked with that partner, but because I got like a programming background, I was really intrigued in the solutioning side and doing the development side. So I started getting my hands dirty towards the end, where I ended up doing a good part of the development along with the consultant, a guy called Simon Kelly, who was working for the partner and doing the implementation for them, and it kind of went from there. By the end of it, when the company wanted to just use what they got within ServiceNow, I sort of said, I want to do this for a career. So I then went out and looked and joined the partner that did the implementation, because they were one of the well-respected ones, and obviously gave me that first insight in ServiceNow, and then I went from there.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I mean, how easy was it to learn ServiceNow?
So I hadn't got any experience with JavaScript. So of course, back then you had to build a lot of the solutions. The platform was nowhere near as comprehensive as it is now. So you ended up doing quite a lot of JavaScript. So I was brand new to JavaScript, so I was self-taught, did all the usual courses that still kind of stand the test today, read some books, read the wiki like everybody else, ServiceNow Guru, kind of everyone knows those kind of things, took tips from there, and basically kind of just played around. I mean, there was no dev instances or anything like that, or PDIs at the time, so you were doing it with kind of on your customer's environment, in the dev environment. But yeah, it was just throwing yourself in and trying to learn by making mistakes and fixing them. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it came about.
Yeah, I love that. It's yeah, amazing. And obviously ServiceNow, it's rapidly evolving. It's always got new features, updates. You know, professionals, experienced professionals stay up to date. To make sure their skills are always relevant and in demand.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to say that. So I was looking at some AI search capability, and even all the configuration options within something like AI search is probably what you do to develop incident management so a whole process is now just like one small feature set in ServiceNow. You've got all these configuration options and things like that, and the tried and trusted methods of looking at the release notes, gain access on an instance. So again, you have the opportunity to have PDIs and be able to get the upgrades on PDI instances. Definitely sort of reading release notes, the community, discuss with peer groups, things like that, that you see and share that information. That's really the still tried and trusted method. Attend webinars, so there's loads of in fact there's one later this week about the Vancouver release, so you've got access to all those things that ServiceNow try and put out there, so that you are as ready as you can be to know what's coming down the road.
Yeah, sounds great. And I suppose, having a good mentor, joining a company where you've got great leadership, probably plays, a big part in anybody's career. Talk us through about some of the influences that you've kind of had. Talk us through about some of the mentors or the journey that you've had, where you've had really good people that have kind of, taught you a lot.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I have been lucky in my career, because I've had people who have shown faith in me and given me opportunities. And of course, part of that is when you get opportunities, sometimes you are going to make mistakes, because that's all part of the learning cycle. So having people who will give you opportunities but understand that you're going through a learning process, and they can give you that support and guidance. I've had a few people in my career, and that's just not on the technical side. I work with someone in a HR team who is a HR partner, and they taught me a lot about HR processes and things like planning career paths and things like that, and behavior, how to deal with behaviors, and how behaviors are just as important as delivery and things like that. So it wasn't just the technical mentors I had, it was people who were able to give me an exposure to all manners of things you experience in your working life. And I'd like to think that they've helped me when I've had to take managerial roles or leadership roles or be a mentor to somebody. They've given me that kind of additional skill set. So yeah, mentors do play a real part, and I think if you do have the chance to be mentored, you should absolutely take it, and don't just learn from what they tell, but learn from how they mentor you as much as anything else, so you can then be that mentor of the future to someone else who needs mentoring, and that is because it's tremendously rewarding. It's tremendously rewarding to talk to people and say, I've given you the ability to do something today that you couldn't do yesterday, and that is like tremendously rewarding as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about mentors, people, particularly people that are experienced, want to go down the thought leadership path, what traits do you think makes a good mentor, like from your experience?
Certainly communication. So being able to communicate at different levels, I think that stands you in good stead regardless. If you can find a way with communicating with somebody so you see that light bulb come on. There's plenty of times where someone's been talking to me and I'm kind of like, I have no idea what's going on here. But then they'll change tack. They'll change tack and then they'll say something in a different way, and suddenly it'll just click, and it'll go, right, that's what that is. That's what that means. That's what you're talking about. So communication is key, and patience, understanding. One of the values we have at UP3 is everybody does something for the first time, and that's true. Everyone has been in that position where you've done that, and that's the first time you've done it, and you have to remember that to kind of say, right, well, you might have done this 1,000 times, and somebody's really struggling, but for them they've never done it before, so you have to try and find a way to give them the information they need to be able to complete the task or whatever it is they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it's having that beginner's mindset. It's like, if you don't forget that yourself, you are then going to be learning and being able to then, like you say, communicate and deliver that message across. And I suppose then you're seeing it from their eyes, right? So there's so many instances where we can cut corners because we're like, oh, we know how to do this. But yeah, for the newbies that we're training, absolutely. So yeah, definitely. And, people always talk about mindset, these days as a really important tool, in the box. What would you say has been your mindset, to get to where you have been today?
So being positive, I
Yeah.
think, being willing to accept that it's going to be challenging, and be open to that, because that's where you'll get that learning. I mean, we talk about if everyone could just download a book of how to be a ServiceNow consultant or whatever, then everyone would just download the book and that'd be it. But it's not like that. So I think you have to have that enthusiasm. I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but the enthusiasm to want to learn is absolutely critical. So you're going to go on a fairly steep curve, particularly if you're, say, starting out. So people on the next gen program or things like that, if they're starting out, then they're going to have a really steep learning curve, and you just have to accept that. And again, you've got to also learn, be prepared to learn from things that didn't go so well. I'm not going to say mistakes, because there might not be mistakes. I think it's also important to say, well, why did that go well? I've done that really, that's gone swimmingly, but don't just kind of discard that, because there are things that you can do as part of that. I've delivered that really well. Well, what did I do to deliver that really well? How do I make sure that's kind of part of my standard makeup? So there's certainly being positive, being open to learning from the challenges that you face. I think they're the key things.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And, being positive is, some people have it naturally. Other people, can be a little bit anxious and, where they're like, oh, things are not going quite right. How would you sort of calm somebody's nerves so they do remain positive? And like you say, if there are mistakes made, they don't completely beat themselves up about it. Like, what would your advice be there?
You've got to give them the right environment. I think they've got to have the right environment to know that if they don't do something right, it's not the end of the world. I mean, there are times. I mean, there is a story that I will tell that kind of was a career defining moment for me that I'm happy to share. If it's a bit of a
Yeah,
story,
please. Yeah.
but so it was when I was working on support. So I was working on support, and I was doing some copying some data from one place to another. And at the time, there was one place where we were supposed to have what was supposed to be the source data, and one place was supposed to be the recipient place where we'd put this data, and I accidentally swapped them the wrong way round. And this was at a time when the company I was working for, the CEO was announcing the figures on the TV about how well that company had performed. And what happened is you could start seeing people kind of running around in the background, because basically I'd moved these files that turned all their systems off, basically.
Wow.
And I went straight into kind of panic mode. But the first thing I did, we fixed it. It was all retrievable. We managed to fix it. And I remember my manager was sat over from me, and they said, you just suddenly went ashen. And he says, if I was going to describe it, it was almost like, I can imagine someone had just told you that your grandmother had died or something like that, because my
Oh
face just
no.
sort of dropped. But I knew what I'd done. I made a mistake. I went straight over to the account executive, and I said, look, I've made a big mistake. I know I shouldn't have done it. I'll take whatever. I'll take whatever punishment, so to speak, that I deserve. I know I've done the wrong thing. And he just turned around and said, "You'll never do that again, though, will you?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." And he said, "Right, okay, that's it." And again, so I went away, and I'd never did it again. But that also taught me a number of things. One, which was taking ownership of, you will make mistakes, no matter how much you prep, because I'd done loads of these, so I'd prepped and prepped. Um, Owning up to your mistakes, so owning up and kind of saying, yeah, this is what I've done. But then the leadership of the person in charge to realise that these things do happen, and I'd got a fairly good solid track record of being really, really good at what I did. and that was just one mistake, and people make mistakes, and it's kind of like, right, well, I'm not going to throw just one moment of ill judgment out compared to all the other things. So again, kind of some leadership traits as well. So I think creating that environment where people can feel, okay, well, you've got the support so that you can learn and hopefully avoid mistakes. But if mistakes are made, there is a support network there that can make you say, look, this is all part of the journey. And again, you learn from them, and you see these things happen, and they don't tend to happen again. And I to pick up on a bit about the positivity, it isn't about being kind of, it's not about kind of being the rah-rah sort of positivity. It's just feeling, okay, there is always there's always a way forward that you can look at and say, right, I'm improving, I'm getting better, I've done a good job. It's looking at things that sort of, that's a good way to look forward on things, rather than always kind of going, well, how could I have done always better, and things like that.
Yeah, I do. I love that because it makes it a much more nurturing environment, for people to kind of, and I think that's perhaps maybe where the best creative kind of environments come in as well. You allow people to kind of be creative and express themselves and be open to having ideas, and that's how companies fall forward. I mean, I've worked for big corporates before, and these kind of environments aren't always, with in line with those. What advice would you give to people that perhaps are working for some of the hugest kind of corporates out there, where, it can be a bit restrictive? You are always kind of watching your back, making sure you don't make those mistakes, because sometimes it's not so easy to kind of go, okay, don't worry about it. Like, what advice would you give to those guys?
Can work for a different organisation. No, I wouldn't say that. So certainly, I think there's a lot of people. So when you look at, there's a lot of people who are willing to provide that mentorship within the community. I think look for, if you feel like, there is opportunity in the organisation you had, but you're not quite hitting that mark, or you feel like you're a little bit, then reach out to the community. There are lots of people who do want to give back. They've been in the ServiceNow ecosystem a long time, and they know. They know some of the challenges. They know how difficult it can be at some places, and they're willing to kind of give back. So make sure you've got a network of people that you can reach out to, because it doesn't always have to be with your own. It's not about giving proprietary information away or anything like that. It's sometimes just being able to discuss a certain type of challenge and kind of get that to say, well, how would you go about that? How would you do it? So I think reaching out to the community is definitely one thing that I would do. And also, you can do training. Now you've got access to things like your PDIs and things which we didn't have access to when we started. Then you have got a way of being able to validate some things before you do it for real on the customer's instance. So you've got that capability as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's brilliant. And, I suppose part of it is being resilient, because there will be ups and downs, there will be challenging times. Talking from your own personal kind of, background, what strategies do you employ to kind of bounce back from those setbacks, so you don't dwell on it for too long and you just kind of go, right, positive mindset, let's move on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think it's still important to reflect. I do, and it's kind of, I guess it's one of those things where I don't know, as I've got older, as I've got more experience, then I'm able to do that, because I'm less kind of concerned in terms of what people think about, because I know it's important for me. It's my way of dealing with those situations. So I always kind of think about, okay, even now when I have conversations with people, I'll try and give myself some reflection time to say, how did that conversation go? did that conversation go as well as it could have done? Could I have said something? Could I have said something differently? Could I behaved in a different way? Was my communication at the right level? Did I get what I expected out of that? And I'll do that against this podcast. We'll once I'll reflect and go, right, did I say that if I got everything out that I wanted to say, or did I answer the questions correctly? But I think you've got to give that time to I think you've got to get that time to reflect. And again, it's kind of learning. So, well, sometimes there are things that are outside your control, and therefore to understand them allows you to kind of say, right, well, I'm not going to beat myself up about that, because there's not a lot of things that I could have done differently to be able to change the situation. That bit is outside my control. But I think also there's things that if you do that proper bit of reflection, there are things that you may have thought are outside your control, but if you reflect properly, there are things that you could influence, whether that's having a conversation a lot earlier in the process, or changing your communication, or getting more people involved, and those are all the bits that you kind of realise, well, that's what I'm going to take into next time. That's what I'm gonna learn for next time, and hopefully that kind of helps build up that. I think it's the skills to deal with resilience, to make you resilient, rather than just resilience in itself. It's all these different things that you can do that as a combination would make you more resilient.
Definitely, yeah. And I love that, how the reflection piece, because if anything, this is where the learning comes into it. And it doesn't matter what stage you are in your career, if you take that time out to kind of really sit back and think, right, where can I do better? Where did I do great? Let's not forget the gratitude part. I think that plays a huge part in it as well. And I think it's great that you take that time out to do that, which is brilliant. And, like a lot of leaders that I speak to, however confident they may be from the outside, internally, there's always moments of self-doubt, there's moments of imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
How do you kind of overcome these feelings of insecurity?
So the imposter syndrome, because you're right. I think people experience it in different ways. Some are, I've worked with some people who are incredibly talented. Some of the things that they can do and the way that it's their speed of thought. It's not just it's how they suddenly come up. Oh, that's the solution to that. I'd be like, well, I'd be like designing stuff or writing stuff down or processing all the information. Some people have just got that natural. Even then they have that kind of that self-doubt element. It's interesting, because I've kind of, when I first went into consultancy, I was surrounded by people who had done the job a lot longer than I had. They were principal consultants, they were ITIL specialists. They'd worked on, configuring ITSM tools for years and years and years. And here was me, I've been kind of doing it for what? 18 months, sort of 2 years, and obviously all within one single space, and I guess it was kind of strange, because it wasn't the fact that what I did is I admired what they brought. I admired their skills and experience, rather than looked at it as a failure of my own or a lack of my own. And I guess I just tried to learn to appreciate that when you're in that situation where you're surrounded by other people who you feel fundamentally inferior to, you look at that as an opportunity to work with some really great people and learn from them, and try and put that kind of different spin on it, which is, wow, I'm surrounded by all this talent that I can learn from, rather than going, all this talent is looking at me and I'm like the least effective person in the room. And I think I don't want to say it's because some people I know do really suffer badly, but I think it is just trying to think about things in that slightly different way, that you've got access to all these people, and trying to see that as, wow, an opportunity to learn and get the experience that you need, rather than you're not as experienced as them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic. That is. It's just a great way of thinking about it rather than kind of being, internally just thinking it's like, okay, great, here's an opportunity. I'm working. I mean, I've worked previously with architects, and I get told, and obviously I was always from the HR recruitment point of view, but I was always told, oh, this person, give them any, technical problem, they'll come up with a solution like that, and it'll be the most amazing solution that you could think of. But they themselves doubted themselves. They were like,
Yeah.
oh, should I really put it forward? And yeah, and it's I suppose it's giving that people that empowerment, and like you say, it's all come back down to the environment that you work in.
Yeah.
If you feel safe, secure, that you can share and can express ideas, the sky's the limit, really. So definitely. And these days, mental health is so important. Emotional health is so important, and it's a real paradox for success. How do you prioritize self-care, manage stress, so you don't burn out? Because I can imagine your role's quite demanding. Like, is there any practices or habits that you follow?
Get a dog to walk the dog. That's always useful because you've got no excuses. Everyone will say I'm gonna have 5 minutes to walk away, but when you've got a dog sort of begging to be walked, then you have no excuses. I think
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because if you take COVID as an example, the working from home scenario, I found really interesting because ever since I've been involved in ServiceNow, working for a ServiceNow partner, remote working has typically been the mode. You go and see customers or you go to the office every now and again for a team meeting, but most of the time you were working remotely. And it was funny that when COVID happened, there was no doubt I struggled a little bit because there was a difference between having the choice to go and work from home and go and see customers and other people, but then to be told that you can't go anywhere was like, wow, that's really that's impacted me in a way that I didn't expect because I'm usually working from home, and now I'm told I'm still working from home, but now I'm told I've got to work from home, and it was interesting how that kind of changed the psyche. And I think I learned a lot from that, dealing with that situation around, okay, I need to install some disciplines like protecting your lunch breaks if you need to. Make sure you do go and have a break every kind of hour. Just get yourself away from the screen. Say go for that kind of bit of walk, that walk and kind of clear your head and give yourself that thinking time. And because it was at that time so easy to just have like the days kind of blend into the evenings because you couldn't go out anywhere, you were just kind of sat there and stuff like that, and then and again that was weird because well, that's not changed. Why do I feel different? Where it's like that my normal, I find myself working longer and longer into the evenings. So yeah, putting those things in place and those kind of things that will protect them, even putting like focus times in your calendar and things like that so that you don't get kind of back-to-back meetings. And I think knowing when you've come off a particularly challenged piece of work, don't be afraid to just say I just need a bit of a breather. I just need a day where I've come off a really difficult project. We've just done a big implementation. There's been lots of hard work. Everyone knows when you get towards go live, everything is like kind of all hands to the pump. And I think you need to be a bit selfish. You need to be a bit selfish to say I just need that bit of time. But the benefits of having that time means that you come back more refreshed and more kind of ready and more kind of right, okay. But it's not easy. It's not easy. You have to you do have to find means. There's lots of different ways. There's lots of things, and not everyone can do that kind of stuff. That's not their natural style or to do it. But you have to find some way of giving yourself that breathing space and that reflection time. Otherwise, yeah, you will be on the path to burnout.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so interesting you bring up work from home because, I get a lot of feedback from people saying, they're working more now since completely working from home than they were when they used to go to the office, because there was very much a distinction. You go to the office, you do your job, that's it. You leave the office, you leave your work behind. Now it's like your home is the office now, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
obviously you mentioned about take the dog for a walk and try and take breaks as you can, but not all employers see that, right? They expect you, right, 8:30 till 6, you are to be chained to
Yeah.
your home office. So how would you kind of like navigate that part, do you think?
Well, I think, well, employers now have to, it's not typically a 9 to 5. What we do is not really a 9 to 5 job. And I kind of say that because there are things where you have to do, you have to, if you're doing a technical consultant or developer, you might have to promote code in a certain change window that might be over the weekend or out of hours. Testing, people find testing last minute defects and things like that. And I think, it's very much, to me, the modern employer just needs to understand that it's a period where things just need to get done, and treat people, adults, to sort of say this is what we need to get done by this point in time. And I always talk to my team about, in a way, I don't, if you've not got customer meetings where you have to be in front of a customer, you can develop on the settee, sitting in your dressing gown or something like that. The key thing is, if we say that we're going to get something done by a certain point in time, we get that thing done. So if you want to start, if you've got no meetings, if you're better, if you feel you're a bit of an owl, and you feel that I bet I'm working better at 10, I can work 10 till 8 because that's better for me, and it means I can do my stuff in the morning. I'd much rather have that kind of conversation and that thing to get the best out of you, rather than it be, right, here's the rules, you've got to be here, you've got to be here. Say if you've got customer meetings and things like that, you're always got to be there for those. But fundamentally, when you try and get that work done, is less important. I think it's just making sure that you're choosing the most effective time and when you're most productive, because that's the most important thing to me. If you're most productive an hour between 6 and 7, then I'm not going to turn around and kind of say, well, don't work 6 till 7 because it doesn't fit in with me. I want you to be the most productive, and when you feel that you can be most happy when you're working and fits in within your kind of work-life balance. Because I mean that again is kind of really important.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. It's kind of giving people the empowerment of time, but saying, look, these are tasks that we need to do. This is the project. This is the deadline. Let's all do it together. Let's make sure it's done by then. And I think that's really empowering, because it does give people that sense of freedom where they can, especially if they've got kids, right? Pick up, drop offs, and right, let me put them give them bath time, and then so it works. I think it works fantastic. I think it's a great attitude to have, definitely. What would you suggest to perhaps, let's say, the next gen community or somebody who's literally just starting their career in ServiceNow? Do you think a work from home environment is as good as being in an office, or like, what are your thoughts for somebody like that to learn?
So you can learn a lot by watching other people, and because part of the skill is not to have a longevity in the career. It's not going to be just the technical points that you need to be proficient at. It's the consultancy elements, it's the communication, and sometimes you have to see people in action and you have to experience that. So it is finding that right blend. We like people to come into the office, for one, to meet people face to face. There's always going to be that bit that is, right, well, I know what that person looks like. I mean, I don't know about you, but how many times have you've been met someone in the first time after you've only been meeting them virtually, and suddenly it's kind of like, wow, I mean, wasn't quite expecting that, and it's just those little things that make us more human. I think.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we've been interacting on a face-to-face scale for tens of thousands of years. So for that to then suddenly completely go just over a short period of time is, you know, that there's evolution behind that. So I think that there is that element of communicating with people, talking to people. Again, it's kind of learning from people, learning how they handle situations. I mean, I've learned so much from just being in like a workshop and watching the lead person running that workshop and kind of going, wow, you know, I'm seeing how they've regained the room. So I've seen people kind of start to lose interest, phones come out, stuff like that, and then they've just changed the narrative and suddenly everyone else is engaged again. And you don't get that from just doing a, you know, Zoom call or a Teams call or anything like that. You have to see it. So I think that kind of interacting with people, those elements where you know, having those ad hoc conversations are really important, because you also want to feel like you do get to know people on a bit of a personal level. I mean, some people more than others, you know, are more open to that, but I don't want it to just all because we're at work and we're working together that I don't know anything about you. just sort of, and again, I think that's more a case of, let's go and have a coffee, you know, and let's just have a conversation. Where you going on holiday, you know, all that kind of stuff, whatever's their interests, and you get to know them personally. And of course that again kind of makes it feel like you know, you're more of a tighter group, I guess, you know, because you can, and of course when situations happen outside of work, you kind of then get a better understanding. There's a lot more empathy that you can provide, because you understand a little bit more about, okay, I understand that's, you know, that's something that, you know, it is either that someone should be really, really pleased about, or obviously that might affect someone in a less positive way. So I think finding that mix of making those connections, going into the office, meeting people, particularly at the beginning, is really, really key. And when you talk about, you know, the working from home stuff, it is based on trust. You know, you want to be treated like an adult, but that's based on that trust element in proving that you're worthy of that trust to say, leave it with, you know, I'll do these things. But if you keep kind of missing the deadlines or not doing what you'll say you're going to do, then that trust erodes, and that's when you start getting kind of those things that you need to address. But you like to think, okay, well, you start off with that trust, you build it, and I think all that is part of finding that bit. I mean, I talk about, sometimes I know I'm having a conversation with someone and I can tell that I just need to go and see them. I just need to go to the office and say, this is not, let's just go and meet up. You know, we've had a couple of calls over Teams or whatever. I feel like let's just go and have a face to face. Let's just go and have a talk. And that's what you want. That's what you want from that kind of working from home, kind of being in the office balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. And it's so interesting because obviously we keep seeing in the news, like Canary Wharf, so many companies are now moving out. I mean, obviously I can imagine the rent is atrocious, but, you know, the fact that, you know, they're getting rid of offices and they're now kind of saying, well, you know, we're embracing the remote way of working. Do you feel that the new generation might miss out, or do you even feel that, you know, we might not advance as quick as perhaps we would have been had we had this kind of real tight kind of working? What do you think about the future?
I mean, that is definitely an interesting question. I mean, the working practices have continued to evolve for decades. So I imagine you will get to a point where it won't be as impactful as what you think. But I think we're still in this transitional period where, you know, you see some organisations are now kind of mandating you've got to be in sort of, you know, 3 days a week. I mean, some have even gone that to know now you've got to be in the office. You know, everything. There's no reason for you not to be in the office, but that Pandora's box has been opened. You know, no one's kind of going back to, no one's going to back. And if they do, I don't think that then they'll risk losing people who will appreciate the fact that there's no need. I think that's the thing. I think people have proved that there is no need. There's all the things around the productivity discussions. Are we more productive at home? Are we more productive? And I'm sure they'll continue, and there'll be a study that I can read that will say you're more productive at home. There'll be a study I read that are more productive in the office. But I think fundamentally, you can be productive. You can be productive. I'm going to say you can be productive enough. You are no less productive than what you were before. I would say you're probably more productive with this work-life balance of working from home and working in the office. And I think the thing that I just wouldn't like is for people to for people who are coming thinking that is their only option. You work from home, that's it. You just want them to feel like I've said, if you want to have a conversation with someone, if you do want to just go into the office and feel part of something, because there's no doubt about it, for the majority of people, I'm not saying everybody, but for the majority of people, when they go and they're there, you can see the excitement, the collaboration, the camaraderie that kind of gets sprung up. It's just something that just wouldn't happen in a virtual world, and I'd hate people knew to miss out on that because they thought, oh yeah, working from home is great, I get to do all this stuff, but you would miss out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even like the small things, like going for drinks after work, right? Going grabbing a bite to eat. And that's what what you said, that's how you make friends, right? The people you work with, most of them turn into some of your best friends. So I do feel that as well, that sometimes that the young generation might just not get to experience that, and I think that would be a huge shame. So
it would be.
Yeah, definitely. So no, absolutely. So, and I think it's really important to like balance like ambition and humility, especially when you're first starting out, right? You've guns blazing, you're so excited, How have you managed to stay so grounded and maintain that humility whilst kind of reaching the top where you are?
I guess it depends who you speak to. It goes back to some of the things I said earlier, where I really do appreciate the skills of the people who I work with, and that is absolutely like across the board. There are things that people can do that I wouldn't be able to do because I'm not very good at them, and others that I just have no interest in doing. So I try and have an appreciation for all the things that people work to deliver into our organisation, and there's again, whether it's kind of experience or time, that adage of you surround yourself with people better than yourself, and you kind of share in their successes as much as anything else. And honestly, I think the reason is I get so much pleasure and happiness and satisfaction out of seeing these people progress through their careers and achieve some really great things and deliver some great things, and even to the point where they've gone in and taken more experienced roles and more senior roles, and even just to think that I might have played a very, very small part, because it's all down to them. It's all down to their passion and enthusiasm. I'm not going to, but being able to kind of say, oh, perhaps do this in this way, or here's some feedback for you, and knowing that might have played that kind of part, I think that probably then is seen as humility from that, but I don't, that I find it tremendously rewarding, and gives me great satisfaction. So I guess it probably comes from that more than anything.
Yeah, and that sounds amazing, definitely. And I can definitely see, Justin, how passionate you are, and I think that passion, it's really infectious, right? So, how do you keep like someone who's quite new motivated? They're experiencing things for the first time. How do you keep that sort of passion alive so it doesn't fizzle out and burn out?
Yeah, I think one of the things is try not to overwhelm them, because it could be quite, when they're first new, there is so many opportunities and so many different avenues and so many things that they could do. I think it having experienced it, you see it can be quite overwhelming, and I think part of that is is tailored, because what you can get involved in something, then you get overwhelmed, and then suddenly you're kind of then it then becomes a negative rather than a kind of positive. Oh, I've got all this stuff to learn. To oh, I've got all this stuff to learn. It's kind of just that sort of change in kind of expression. So I think it's making sure that you've got they're focusing on things that keep giving them that stretch, but it's not overwhelming to them. And then also working with people to understand, well, where do you want to go? And I don't want to go, oh, where do you want to be in 5 years time, 6 years time, anything like that. I mean, there's one thing that I always talk about, which is when I went to my son's school induction day. And one of the things that rang so true was one of the head teacher said, "We are teaching your children to do jobs that don't exist yet." And I was like, wow. Yeah, that's really true, because my job didn't, was no, I don't know, it wasn't even a twinkle in anybody's eye, I think, when I kind of left school and stuff. So I think, yeah, okay, some people do no long-term goals, but I think it's having some realistic goals that people can chalk off and regularly show that they are learning and progressing, and then working with them to kind of say, okay, well, what's next, and also advising them of, okay, this is what's out there, this is the current these are the latest trends, these are the things that you're seeing, this is where you're seeing the demand, sharing that with them so they feel that they are working on things that are very relevant, and therefore things that, okay, well, I've learned this, but so what? This is kind of old hat now. No one needs to know that. So it's giving them regular goals that are stretching but achievable, so that they always feel like they're, but trying to make sure, look, you can't, anyone who says to me, I know all about ServiceNow, is not telling the truth, because it's not possible. It's not possible, and therefore you're just kind of like, right, okay, let's just focus on this, make you really proficient at this, and then let's move on to something else.
Yeah, it sounds amazing advice. And, like, obviously, we're a specialist ServiceNow recruiter, and I always get phone calls, from people that are starting out their journey. And they always ask, okay, what route should I take? Should I perhaps go down an engagement manager route, project management? Should I stay technical? Should I become a developer? Should I, should I become a business analyst? Like, what should I do? What's your opinion, being on your side of the fence? Like, what you think the future would be, and what best career choice?
So, having come from an area where pro code was very, very dominant, you had to be a pro code developer, and obviously seeing the platform evolve, certainly I say the future is very much around consultancy on the platform. There will always be a place for pro code developers, there'll always be a place for no code developers, but being able to consult, and of course that can go into any kind of role, whether you're a business process consultant, or whether you're an engagement manager, or whether you're a technical consultant, or you class yourself as in a technical role. But being able to get the most value out of the platform is always going to be a very high regarded skill. So even kind of from the engagement management side, and I work with engagement managers who have no ServiceNow experience, but they are just phenomenal at managing an engagement. And for certain customers, that's what you need. They need a strong engagement manager who can just manage time, cost, and quality. That's and manage the scope. That is essential, because that's the type of customer that needs that sort of rigor to deliver successfully. But likewise, you then get other engagement managers who can develop on the platform. They've kind of done their CSA and things like that, and sometimes those kind of people are appropriate for the delivery that you're doing. But certainly, I think that as the platform has evolved and the platform has matured, customers are going to be looking for how do we get the most out of the platform? Where are we not utilising it where we should be? Are we using it in the right way? Tell us what, this is what we have within our organisation. How can ServiceNow solve that problem for us? So I think whatever, be prepared to do an element of consultancy around that area, and I don't think that's limited to a pure technical role. I think it's across all sorts. But also in terms of you want to do what you're good at, what you enjoy. If you can get a role doing stuff that you enjoy, then happy days. I think throughout my working career, there's time that I've kind of been lucky where I have enjoyed most of the times what I've been doing, but there's a few times where I'm going, I'm just not enjoying this. And like you said, you spend so much time at work. If you can find something that is really in your skill set, and you have a natural, a natural understanding, or just get that, then if there is a way that you can lean into that, then definitely lean into that, because you're a long time working and you need to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a little saying that people say, it's like, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And it's so true, anything you do in life, if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be a really hard 8 hours of your day. But if you do something you really enjoy, you're like, oh my God, is that the time already?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's things I talk about. You go to jobs where you're clock watching, where you look at the time and go, God, is it only 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
And ever certainly since I've been doing this kind of role or working involved in service now, I'll look at it and I'll go, God, it's 2 o'clock already.
Yeah.
Again, it's just the different ways of saying, oh, it's only 2 o'clock. Oh, it's 2. It's those different things where one way you're going, God, and then the other one is, wow, it's gone so quick. And I mean, you don't want to wish your life away, but it just means that you're clearly engaged in what you're doing, which I think is really important.
Definitely, yeah. And then you're going to be focused and you're just going to do a great job overall. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. It's, find something that you love, because I think even any area you go in, I think you're always, as long as you passion for it, you're always going to do really well, and you can climb to that top, whether it's you want to go down the technical route and be an architect, or whether you want to go down the management route, and so definitely is great advice. I was going to ask you, just in terms of ServiceNow certifications, what would you recommend for those starting out who are looking to kind of start their career? What ServiceNow certifications would you recommend?
So I've always been a big advocate of understand as much as you can about the platform.
Yeah.
Because all the products are typically a sum of the parts of the platform. So certainly learn around the platform fundamentals, even to the point of doing some of the micro certs around things like Flow Designer, Predictive Intelligence, Integration Hub, all those kind of things. I would always try and be as proficient you can on platform capability, because then you've got the best chance of understanding how potential ServiceNow products or custom apps are then put together, because you understand the platform. From product perspective, ITSM is always going to be a kind of focus, because it gives you a good ground, and still the majority of customers are ITSM. They have gone into ServiceNow. I know it's great because it's increasing where customers are buying the ServiceNow because they want to do CSM, or they want to do SecOps, or they want to do field service management, but still predominantly customers have evolved out of ITSM, and therefore they've gone into other areas of the platform. So and again, if you've worked in operational type roles, so when you look, still quite a few people you see have kind of come through that operational type background. It seems like, when you look at customers, I used to work on a service desk, and then someone said, would you like to be an admin of ServiceNow? And I'll give that a try, and then I'm an admin of ServiceNow, and then they start their journey from there. That is still, I would say, a good percentage of people where they've kind of come from. Yeah. But of course, they've got that operational process then, and if you understand an operational process, then you can typically join the dots on any process, because there is a certain flow to it and things have to happen and certain steps need to be taken at a point in time. So I'd still say ITSM. There is a big CSM has obviously been really successful recently. A lot of big CSM implementations. I think that's slowly catching up with ITSM from a ServiceNow kind of product sales standpoint. And then one of the things that we're doing, we're seeing more and more demand for, and again, this is because customers have been through that maturity. They might have had the platform for 6 or 7 years, so they've done the traditional stuff, and now they're getting so service portfolio management is kind of quite a lot of the next thing that is leaning on. But again, when you break down service portfolio management, it's not about customizing service portfolio management. It's about understanding how customers can use service portfolio management how it is, rather than kind of, right, we're going to add all these fields and create all these flows and business rules to make it do something different. It's kind of like, you don't need to. The product's pretty mature, so you're talking about how do you implement that for a customer. So those kind of the ones, and of course doing the as a kind of custom app. I love building custom apps. Love kind of always, even in my role, I still like building custom applications. So understanding all about custom apps and perhaps doing the application development course is always useful. I would probably, like we say about the positive things, it's sometimes not always the things that you should change. It's to remind yourself to do the things that you did to kind of get yourself where you are. So I would probably say to myself, in kind of moments of doubt, continue to take opportunities when they present themselves. And I think also go in with that open mindset to say, right, the reason why I'm doing this is to improve my skills, whether that's personal skills, whether that's technical skills. I think I would probably. I don't want to feel like I've got like regrets over what I've done, because they make me the person that I am today. But I think it is that reminder to say, no, you did do it. And there are things that I wish I probably would have done. I could have done differently and probably should have done differently. But would I have had the learnings from them if I'd have avoided them or done things? I probably should have said that. I probably would have told myself that Bitcoin was something that was going to be real. That might have been one of the things that I would have said. But no, I think I would have said, I would have just reminded myself to stay true to what I believe and what I think. I don't think I would have gone around and said, yeah, don't do this, because say when you get there, you need those experiences, you need those lessons learned to be able to make more informed decisions, because you can say, right, well, yes, I did that last time and that wasn't a good outcome, so now I need to do something slightly different, and if I avoided that, then I wouldn't be able to do that. So I don't know if that's a bit of a cop out, but
yeah, no, that sounds absolutely amazing. So you wouldn't give yourself the almanac, no, and be a billionaire, or
it's too easy. It's too easy. And how do you know? How do you know that? It's kind of, it's one of those things where you'd love to say, oh, well, you're never in that position, are you? If I was suddenly given, infinite wealth at the end of it, how do I know I'd be kind of happy? How do I know I'd have a life that, it's not like everything is always a bed of roses, but I don't believe life should be like that anyway. I think getting through some slightly difficult times or slightly challenging times teaches a lot about ourselves, and also kind of gives us a bit of, wow, I got through that. I was able to come out the other side.
Well, that sounds amazing. Look, Justin, it's been amazing to have you on the show. Thank you so much. And it's been really eye-opening to hear your stories, your advice, your guidance, and hopefully this will help other people. So thank you so much for joining us.